live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Anything you wish to discuss today, okay? It's a beautiful day. You may just want to discuss the weather. By the way, I got my pool open, although we're still not ready to go in, but it's warming up. It's warming up. You may have some thoughts or something concerning that, whatever the hell it was last night. They called it a debate, gong show. Weird, man. That was weird.
Paddle? What book are you reading, Lowell?
What? I'm reading a book about Russia.
Yeah, it was weird last night.
Weird. And I felt sorry for Pierre because the first question, if you were watching, the first question was for him. And of course, everybody decided they all hold up the paddle because they want to respond to him. So he's got to defend himself. So he's finished after about the first 5 minutes. So for the next hour and 45 minutes or whatever it is, we're pretty well restricted to listening to the other 5 while Pierre's got to sit there because he's not allowed to say anything more. It was weird. But anyway, each candidate, of course, had different ideas as to what problems they would solve first, what problems they felt are the most important. National unity, abortion. God, they keep dragging. The liberals love to drag out the abortion issue. Defense, inflation, housing, energy, pipelines, carbon tax. But let me ask you the question. Forget what the candidates believe is the major problem. What about you? What do you think it is? Of all of the issues raised last night, and perhaps some others, your opinion as to what is the most important. Whoever becomes the new prime minister, what issue do you want him or her to tackle first? If you were prime minister, or you could just wave a magic wand like the NDP does, and with this magic wand, you could solve a problem. What problem would it be? And don't tell me your husband, okay? or Trudeau. Those two are out. There's no question that getting rid of Trudeau would solve a lot of problems. But aside from getting rid of your husband or wife or getting rid of Trudeau, what if you had this magic wand? In other words, I'm trying to be serious here. What do you think is the real problem here? What do you think needs to be solved first, dealt with first, if not solved, at least tackled first? What should it be? Healthcare? National unity? A lot of the candidates last night felt that national unity was the number one problem. Defense, that was raised. Immigration, about 400,000. Oh, by the way, they tell us that about 100 people are entering Quebec every day through Roxham Road. Finally, Quebec says, enough is enough. Please shut this place down. It's talking about weird, but anyway, that's a different. But as far as you're concerned, what problem would you solve first, or at least tackle? Pipelines, employment, inflation, cost of living, housing, Aboriginal reconciliation, crime, or something else? Like, it's all very well for the candidates to stand there and give their opinions, which we want to hear, about what needs to be solved. But you're the one. I mean, you're Canada. Canada is not, mountains and trees and bugs and black flies. Canada is you. You're Canada. So what do you think is the big problem? Do you felt that any of the candidates last night dealt with the real problem? In your opinion, the first thing a new leader needs to tackle in your world, that's because, let's face it, that's what's most important to you. In your neighborhood, in your house, what's causing you sleepless nights? Or at least causing you some concern? What worries you? And of course, if you've got any opinions concerning last night's debate, or whatever you want to call it, wasn't much, I mean, not much of a debate. Didn't have much chance to debate. I'm glad to hear your view of it. Would be interested in your assessment, but most of all, I'd like to hear you tell us what you think is the biggest problem that we've got. A message that you want to convey to both the conservative from the liberal from the debate last night, but also don't forget we have an Ontario election coming up June 2nd in what, a couple of weeks. So the message to them, what do you know? So in other words, the leaders, a message for our leaders. What do you think needs to be tackled? And as far as you're concerned, what needs fixing the most in our country, next to getting rid of Trudeau, of course? And I just thought I would pass this along. I don't think this is the number one problem, but it's certainly a problem. I'm trying to get a figure. I've been trying for about 4 or 5 years now to get a figure on how much the taxpayers are billed or have been billed and continue to be billed for solar power. The best estimate I've come up with, and this is pretty educated, is about somewhere between $7 and $10 billion is what we taxpayers have paid out thus far for solar power. Do you know how much? Today is a beautiful, bright, sunny day, just as yesterday was. Yesterday, wind and solar combined were providing 4.86% of our needs. Today, it's up 5%. Solar today is between $7 and $10 billion of taxpayers' money, money that should have gone into hospitals, nurses, doctors, roads, autism, housing, seniors. Money that should have gone there instead went to solar panels. Today, no, one of the most bright, sunny, beautiful days we will ever get. 384 megawatts out of more than 15,000, about 2.5%. That's as good as it gets. Folks, those liberals, provincial liberals, saddled us. Honest to God, that if you do some figuring, if you get down to the figures and talk to some experts, they will tell you that it's between $7 and $10 billion we've spent on solar, not wind, but solar, to this point. And it's producing today about 2.5%, about as much as we will ever get. No wonder this country's in trouble. Sackety blur back. About 5%. Wind, 393 megawatts out of more than 15,000. Solar, 384. About 5% combined. And we have just virtually bankrupted ourselves for it. Created the most expensive electricity in the North American continent, aside from California. Well, John, you've got some you've got some very interesting figures. I've got figures concerning solar and wind, but you've got some fascinating figures as well concerning the real cost of electric vehicles. Let's just deal with that in a moment. Apparently
Sure.
we have some response to my issue here as to what people think of the debate last night and what they think's most important. Let's see what people have to say here, John.
All right, let me just get over to my notes. I'm kind of a million different places at once here. We're in trouble if this is our future leader, says Anne, based on the debate last night. Lori says, I agree. That was a weird debate. Well, what a show. What book do you read? What music do you like? How many times do you get up in the night to pee? The kindergarten paddles came out. I wanted to hear about healthcare, pipelines, the economy, and the military, my opinion. Peter says, what a joke of a debate. Was Tom the liberal drunk? Lisa, the debate last night was nuts. All right, here are people's priorities. Paul would prioritize, healthcare and pipelines. Lori,
Okay.
Lori wants to build some hospitals.
Okay.
And says, get spending under control and start making use of our natural resources.
So there's two, healthcare, and what else?
Uh,
Natural resources.
Natural
Okay.
resources.
And the energy. Okay.
Yep. Proper housing and drinking water for our reserves, says Tina Marie.
By the way, I just want to tell you that I'm recording this. And I'm going to send this off to Doug Ford. As you know, I'm pretty good friends with Doug Ford, and I'm going to pass along what you think is the most important issue here: healthcare, Hospitals, which is healthcare, energy, housing. Okay, go ahead,
Yep.
please.
Let me see. Christine just posted this moments ago. Getting people working or owning small business. Once people are able to work, so much happens. Confidence is built. Income is earned. Economy grows. Taxes are
So you're
paid.
talking employment, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me see. Let's get back to Mahadi. Healthcare and immigration are his priorities.
3 for healthcare, okay.
Yep. Joshua says cost of living.
I'd be interested to know. He mentioned immigration. Immigration was raised last night. I'd be interested to know what he thinks would be an appropriate number. It's about 400,000, and apparently the Liberals are going to double that. But in defense of more immigration, there is no question that there is a very serious labor shortage in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And but it seems to me that immigration, and I think Pierre pointed this out last night, the immigration has got to be targeted more towards our needs, rather than just bring in people while now refugees, different story, but there's no question we need a lot more skilled workers here. Go ahead, John. What else have people got?
Dean says healthcare is my top priority. You don't realize how bad our system is until you've had to go through it with a major illness or injury.
So that's 4 for healthcare, okay.
Chrissy says, I think there are businesses that are hurting from COVID. Help should come to those. Healthcare should be a priority as well.
Okay.
Let me go over to Anne. She says the most crucial thing that should be changed first, that would improve everyone's cost of living, would be to get rid of the carbon tax completely.
Okay.
There you go. Sean says the first thing to tackle is our economy.
Okay.
Cost of living, according to Donald, then housing.
Okay.
Old age security is what Tom would put as his priority number one. Jennifer says the biggest issue she sees with Canada is outside influences, especially the WEF, World Economic Fund.
That's interesting. No question, there's particularly as it applies to our energy industry. I mean, much of the propaganda opposed to pipelines was financed by American interests, oil interests. I mean, and I've said this for years, and that is that it's in the best interests of American oil interests and Saudi Arabian to keep our oil, Canadian oil, in the ground. The more Canadian oil in the ground, the more foreign oil we've got to buy. So it's in the interest of foreign oil producers to keep our oil in the ground. So Saudi Arabia, United States oil interests, the environmental movement in this country fell right into their trap. Go ahead, John.
Anne adds that we shouldn't have a labor shortage, lots of people to work, too many handouts.
Well, I'm not so sure. There's a time when there were, no question, a lot of people should have been working. But I think most people who are able to work, I could be wrong, but I think that most people able to work are working now. It's just we have a real serious labor shortage. Go ahead, John.
All right, let's go to text. As I look out my window here in sunny Newington, Ontario, I can see several windmills, none of which are turning, and there are 2 solar farms within 10 miles of me. I have not seen the benefit of these programs, only increases in my electric bill. I couldn't afford to buy an electric car or afford blah, 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 blah. This person goes on and on. 613-413-2217, by the way, is the number here.
Now, I just want to point out once again, all of the money, and we say $7 to $10 billion. That's about 4 or 5 brand new state-of-the-art hospitals in Ontario. Don't forget, we're talking about Ontario, not Canada. Okay, I have no idea what we spend on solar panels across the country. It would just shake your teeth out. But I want you to look outside. And what do you see? Bright sun, nary a cloud in the sky. About as perfect a spring summer day as you're ever going to get. And all the solar panels that we have in this province can only provide about 2.5% of our needs. It ain't going to get any better than that. All that money. It's not as if, oh, well, it's a dark, cloudy day. They're all covered with snow or whatever it is. No, this is close to a perfect. I just want you to keep that in mind. When you drive by those big solar farms, please keep in mind that there's copper wire attached to the grid from every single solar panel. Okay. Imagine the cost of that. You paid that. That's your money. Should have gone to healthcare. Should have gone to fixing the roads. maybe fix a few potholes around here. Go ahead, John, please.
I was thinking of you the other night. I was installing some new solar lights. These tiny little things that.
Oh,
attach
yeah,
to
that's
your-
fine. Yeah.
Well, okay, but you think about the size of the solar panel that's on these, right? It's bigger than your average stick of gum, right?
Yeah.
It's quite sizable.
Yeah.
And then you've got this battery inside. It's like a double A sized battery. This is again to all this to power this teeny tiny little light bulb that stays on for about 3 hours. So let's extrapolate that, right? Let's bring it to scale and what it's going to take to power my home.
Well, if people want to install solar panels on their roof, particularly if you're in a sunny climate, like if you're Arizona, that may make some sense, but I'm not even sure if people have really costed that out. Now, I want to take a moment here to talk about our good friends at Shields. But
all right, let's do that.
John, when we come back, we're talking about a little bit about electricity. You have a fascinating story there about the real cost of electric cars.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you to read that right after we talk about Shields. Sure. And Shields, once again, folks, we're talking a local family-run business. They're in Pakenham, same location since 1947. Grandpa started it, father took over, and now the son. A great business. They've always been extremely well known and highly regarded up and down the valley. And I want to tell you, if valley people like you and do business with you, you're doing something right. They don't take, valley people. If they have good service, they're very, very loyal, and they're loyal to Shields. Now, particularly since we've begun talking about them, they've expanded their market considerably, selling a lot of product into Ottawa and right down through the St. Lawrence Seaway. So, yeah, no matter where you are, unless you're in Russia or BC, they're not going to be able to deliver to you, as you know. But certainly within, let's say, an ordinary radio range of Ottawa, they'll be glad to deliver. Check out the prices. I've said this before, folks. Price is very important. Compare the prices. Go to Shields, SCHEELS.ca. You'll see a wonderful website there comparing all of the prices, makes, models, etc., and compare with the prices you're going to get at the big box stores. May be surprised. John, you've got a fascinating, this is something I hadn't heard. Yesterday, I asked the question, what do you think the real cost of buying and running an electric automobile is? And someone has actually done that.
Yeah, so this is coincidentally, it just happened to appear in my Facebook timeline shortly before we came to air today. It's a little long-winded. I'll post the entire thing on your Facebook, on my Facebook, and on the Blast the Radio Facebook so people can have a look at it. But I'll narrow it down to just the last paragraph of this gentleman taking a test drive at the invitation of General Motors of a Chevy Volt. This is his review. He says, for 4 days in a row, the fully charged battery lasted only 25 miles before the Volt switched to the reserve gasoline engine. So we're talking a hybrid here. He calculated the car got 30 miles per gallon, including the 25 miles it ran on the battery. So the range, including the 9-gallon gas tank and the 16 kilowatt-hour battery, is approximately 270 miles. It will take you 4.5 hours to drive 270 miles at 60 miles an hour. That's average highway speed, right? Then add 10 hours to charge the battery, and you have a total trip time of 14.5 hours. In a typical road trip, your average speed, including charge time, would be roughly 20 miles per hour. Now, according to General Motors, the Volt battery holds 16 kilowatts of electricity. It takes a full 10 hours to charge that drained battery. The cost for the electricity to charge the Volt is never mentioned. So this person looked it up. He says he pays approximately, and it varies with amount and seasons, but he pays approximately $1.16 per kilowatt. 16 kilowatt hours at $1.16 per kilowatt is $18.56 to charge the battery. $18.56 per charge divided by 25 miles is 74 cents per mile to operate the Volt using the battery. He compares this to a similar-sized car with a gasoline engine that gets 32 miles per gallon. At the time, gas was $3.19 per gallon, so he divided that by 32 and comes up with 10 cents per mile. So 74 for electric, 10 cents for gas. He says the gasoline-powered car cost $25,000. The Volt was $46,000. So the Canadian government, he says, wants loyal Canadians not to do the math, but simply pay twice as much for a car that costs more than 7 times as much to run and takes 3 times longer to drive across the country.
Wow. 7 times more, roughly,
Yep.
than a gasoline powered.
According to this person who test drove the Chevy Volt at the invitation of General Motors.
And then, of course, as we discussed yesterday, you've got about a $10,000 charge to install the plug-in in your home.
And you got to pay the electrician. And you know what? In Ottawa, you probably need some sort of permit for $40,000, don't you? We were talking about that earlier this week. So.
Actually, Leslyn Lewis last night, while she won't get very many votes, a very nice woman, but she made a very interesting statement. She was talking about the real cost of electric vehicles, electric everything, and she said we have to factor in the entire cost. And she talked about little children in Africa mining cobalt and so forth. She said, you've got to factor in everything. When you're talking about buying an electric vehicle, it's not just the cost of the vehicle. It's everything else that goes into it, including, as you're pointing out, the cost of running the damn thing. But there's not only that, but I've been talking to a couple of car dealers, one in particular, and they are deadly afraid that they are very soon going to have a quota from Trudeau about the number of electric cars they've got to sell.
Yeah.
And Trudeau has talked about this, and so has Stephen Guilbeault, second most dangerous man in Canada. And he says, is that people, for the most part, just are not interested in electric cars. They can't afford them, et cetera, et cetera. Last year in Canada, only about 5% of all vehicles sold were either hybrids or electric vehicles. But Trudeau is mandating that in the next 4 or 5 years, he wants 50% of all new vehicles to be electric, and he is threatening to impose quotas on car dealers. This is the kind of thing that Pierre Poilievre is talking about when he's talking about freedom. I mean, here is a government talking about dictating the kind of car you got to have. Wow. John, go ahead.
And so here's part 2 of that article. It's actually part 1, which I didn't get into. So this is a conversation that this person had with a BC Hydro executive. Okay, so British Columbia. If you really intend to adopt electric vehicles, he says, you had to face certain realities. For example, a home charging system for a Tesla requires 75 amp service. The average house is equipped with 100 amp service. On this person's small street, approximately 25 homes, the electrical infrastructure would be unable to carry more than 3 houses with a single Tesla each. For even half the homes to have electric vehicles, the system would be wildly overloaded. This according to a BC Hydro executive. This is the elephant in the room with electric vehicles. Our residential infrastructure cannot bear this load. So, as our genius elected officials promote this nonsense, not only are we being urged to buy these things and replace our reliable, cheap generating systems with expensive new windmills and solar cells, but we will also have to renovate our entire delivery system. This later investment, quote unquote, will not be revealed until we're so far down this dead-end road that it will be presented with an oops and a shrug.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this before. They estimate to change the grid in Ontario alone would be over $1 trillion to revamp the grid to handle a much larger workload of electric vehicles, about $1 trillion. I mean, how many hospitals would that build? This you know what? This whole thing has become a kind of madness, and if we're not careful, it's going to maybe not. It will never destroy. This is Canada, but I tell you, it's going to seriously damage us.
And
if
we
it hasn't already.
Yeah, and Canada, we are not a country of polluters.
Precisely.
Really? I mean, this is an absolute insult to the average Canadian who goes above and beyond to make wise choices, because they're aware, to recycle, to drive, keep their vehicles in good shape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
and our oil industry is one of the cleanest in the world. John, let's. I know it's crazy. John, let's hear what some other people have to say here.
Yeah, Eileen says, that makes me furious. I sure as hell can't afford an electric car. I'm sick of that twit telling me what to buy. We couldn't maintain the damn car. Let me see. Murray says, the only reason gas prices are high is they can't sell this crap with low gas prices. There you go. Woodenhead is Hein. He's on YouTube. He says, you couldn't sell me an electric car. It's impractical and it is costly. Okay, let me get back to where I was on my notes here. And we shouldn't have a labor shortage. Lots of people to work, too many handouts. I believe we got to that already. No for age 16 voters, says Norm. Corlin, respect for our Charter of Rights is her priority, followed by healthcare, the economy, and the military. Peter says if he was prime minister, he'd get rid of the carbon tax within months, health care increase, defense spending. So there's his top three. Patricia puts OAS first. Your daughter Leanne says natural resources.
Okay.
Chris is in to say the biggest issue today is our spending. I agree with Chris. That'd be my top priority.
Economy.
Put money back in the pockets of Canadians. The federal debt, he says, is spiraling out of control and will never be paid off by my grandkids' lifetime. We need to run a surplus. We need to tighten the handouts. If we had even put 10% of CERB into hospital bills, we would have never had to close our economy for 2 years. We need to be smarter across the board. And Coraline is laughing. She's like, that was not a debate last night. Let us never forget the CBC has enough people and money to give them lots of ability to sabotage Pierre winning, says Anne. His first threat, for which he gets a resounding cheer at each of his rallies, is to defund the CBC. They have a vested interest in making sure he does not win, but most of the media outlets seem to lean liberal as well. It's not fair. Here you go. Some of the comments coming in right now. Let me just get to the new ones here. Dylan says, one thing after another. Look what he did with the high-efficiency appliances earlier this year. Seems a lot like an electric car quota. Joshua is in to say they'd rather fund electric vehicles than education so that we are dumb enough to think electric vehicles are a good idea. The quotas are another example of government wanting to influence every decision in our lives.
That's as I suspected. There's two things that seem to be number one. I mean, there was a number of others, but healthcare and the economy.
Yep.
And frankly, John, I couldn't agree more. I mean, to me, these are the two major issues, and one hinges upon the other. If we hadn't spent these billions, tens of billions of dollars, trying to create green energy, we would have all kinds of money for healthcare. And by the way, if we had had that money and had built more hospitals, nurses, etc., we would not have had a lot of those we would not have had to shut down the province for roughly 2 years. Because the real reason we shut down the province was not so much because of the number of cases, but rather the number of cases that the hospitals could or could not handle. And the hospitals, as we know, that we were already talking about hallway medical treatment before COVID came along. So what I'm saying to you is that the economy and healthcare are intertwined irrevocably. If we improve the economy, then we can improve healthcare. If we improve healthcare, we can improve the economy. Go ahead, John.
I agree with you. If we make it here, we should sell it here first and sell it at a discounted price, get our people back to work, get them making some money, and then worry about selling it to the world and profiting. Murray says, conspiracy theorists have been telling you what's coming for years, and now you see them all coming true. Let's go to text, 613-413-2217. This person says, the most important thing is getting the majority vote and getting Trudeau out. I think the number one thing I want fixed is inflation and to reduce the big government spending and staying out of our personal life. When logging into the site today, I saw BTR is off the air. No, we're not off the air. Got me worried that the government shut you down. They need a backup plan. We're not off the air. I'm listening to us right now. Healthcare and long waiting lists to get into hospitals, i.e. Ottawa General MS Clinic is 8 to 12 month waiting list. This is insane, says this person.
Yeah, it's more and more people are beginning to realize that we have a real healthcare crisis here. When you compare almost any factor, comparing Canadian, particularly Ontario, but Canadian healthcare with healthcare in other countries, we fall far behind. We're one of the lowest in doctors per capita. We are one of the lowest in hospital beds per capita, etc. We could go on. Nurses, we could go on. And our wait times are about the highest in the G7. In fact, they're one of the highest in the G20. So, and there's increasing awareness that in order to remedy this, we've got to get a far more private health care. There's no reason why we don't have special clinics to install new knees, hips, cataract surgery. Why that has to be done in hospitals is beyond me. And it's pure ideology, pure and utter ideology. And by the way, the Liberals and many other members, they claim they're opposed to private health care. Well, let me just point out that all the abortion clinics are private health care. Nobody seems to be talking about shutting them down. John, we're out of time here. I want to thank you. And if you get any more information about electric cars and costs, check with your brother and find out what he's.
Yeah. Every Sunday we're on a family Zoom call, and
Okay.
and I ask on your behalf because I'm becoming more and more curious. I just, I love my Ram. I can't see myself in a little electric thing ever. How long will that take me to get to New Brunswick in an electric car? Give me a break.
Yeah, but you don't need a tank, John.
I'm a big guy. I need a big truck.
You, your dog, and you and your dog.
Yeah.
Folks, thank you all. It's a beautiful day. Get it and enjoy it. You're going to walk your dog again today, John?
You betcha.
Good show. Your dog really loves these days too, right? Thank you all, folks. Back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.